Very much. Thank you, Les, for those who are abusing me before we've even started. I don't know if you should start a preach by telling people to shut up, and so I won't, Dan. And so, right, so we are going to be talking about, it's our third week in the kind of series of being holy. I've not been in either of those two because we were away with our young people 2 weeks ago. It doesn't feel like 2 weeks ago, but we were there. There was 55 of us away. We had a 55-person game of hide and seek. It's not important who won. I won. That's not relevant. I won one of them by hiding in the girls' showers. There were no girls in the showers at the time, so there's no need to report anyone to the police. And so it was great. And then so we missed that. And then last week I was with our young people talking about kind of holiness and what that means. And so we're going to look at what it means to be different. And we're going to be in the book of 1 Peter. So if you've got your Bibles and you want to check what I'm saying, it's in 1 Peter chapter 1. That's where we're going to be. And we're going to look at kind of in terms of holiness, what it means to be different, to be set apart in a world that is not our home. In a world that isn't necessarily where we belong. It isn't our true home. What does it mean to be different, to be set apart, to be holy in that world? And that is what we're going to be looking at. And so some of us will feel that we're very different in the way that we are, and maybe sometimes that can look a little weird. Now, in the summer, 3 times, but in the summer, we'll just focus on one of them. I married a certain American lady who you may have already seen a bit of today. She introduced me as a very wonderful and handsome man. We are married. That wasn't just her dropping a massive hint that she was interested. And so it would have been cool, wouldn't it? But no, we are already married. And so one thing you don't know about Lindsay, or may not know, is that she is like into Star Wars. And I mean like she is into Star Wars. Like I may have to go to a Star Wars convention at some point in my life with her. I'm just saying I have never taken her to an accounting convention. I'm just saying love keeps those things separate. And so she has a costume. She dresses up as Rey. One of the saddest things about her coming to England is that big stick, the staff, is still in America. And that is a big thing. That was harder to leave than her family, her friends. It was right up there. Like she keeps saying, "Oh, but how am I going to get that stick over? It's a weapon." Yep, we're not a fan of that. And so that is currently there. That is Rey. If you're wondering if that's a good costume or not, it's a pretty high-level costume that she's got there. She has invested a lot of time and a lot of money. Now, because of that, when we got married, I thought, what would be a nice kind of little touch, a nice little nod, is that me and my best man, we were going to get some cufflinks, which one was the Millennium Falcon and one is the symbol of the rebellion. And I thought, I'm not even going to tell Lindsay. I'm just going to see throughout the day if she spots that. And that was just a nice little thing that we thought, we planned, we had done. It was fine, but then we're getting ready in the room, and for some reason, I had a shirt which didn't have the holes for cufflinks. And so we were like, oh man, what are we going to do here? And I was like, we're not giving up on it. So we came to the conclusion that we needed to just make some holes. And so we said, right, so there's 5 of us in the room, me and my best man Mark, who's English, and 3 American men. And we said, oh, has anyone got a knife? Well, the 3 American men all pulled out a big knife. Hello, America. That's right. So I was like, anyone got a knife? Well, which one do you want? Oh, my goodness, what is wrong with you? And so we were like, okay, choice of knives. So we got a knife, and so I took the shirt off, and I started trying to hack it and create a hole. And at that point, the photographer walked in and met me for the first time as I was shirtless holding a knife. And she's looking at me, and I'm like, she's like, do you want me to come back? I was like, yeah. She had the look in her face of like, I regret every decision I've made in my life. What has led me to this wild man who like, do you want to come and take some photos of me now? Oh, no, not really. Not really. And so we know sometimes we can look weird. And sometimes to be holy and different, it can look weird. We might not look to the world that we are shirtless people carrying knives. But you know what? Sometimes we are going to stand out and they are going to think that maybe we are just as weird or just as unusual as that, because we shouldn't be just the same as everybody else. Like we can't just be the same because our home is not this world. We have beliefs and we have a heart that is above and is other and is different to this world. And that's what we're going to see as we read through this passage here. So in 1 Peter 1 verse 13 to 25, I forgot my Bible with me in all of the chaos and heckling, and so I'll read it from the screen. Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him, and so your faith and hope are in God. Now that you've purified yourselves by obeying the truth so that you've sincere love for each other, love one another deeply from the heart. For you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and enduring word of God. For all people are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers, the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord endures forever. And this is the word that was preached to you. And so there's a lot there. There's a big chunk of scripture. We're going to break it into different bits and different words as we go. And so the first kind of thing we see that Peter talks about is hope. Now, I've kind of taken it back a few verses as well, beyond where we started. But at the start of this book, Peter talks about hope a couple of times. In verse 3, he says, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he's given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And then he goes and says, set your hope on the grace to be found. And if we are to be a holy people, if we are to be different, to be set apart, then hope is a key part of that. It just is. But what I would suggest is, it's not about just the act of hope itself. It's not just the things that make us different are not just that we are hopeful. And do you know what? We probably should be more hopeful than the average person because we have a greater hope. But it's not just the act of hoping that sets us apart. Like those of you who maybe know a little bit about football will know that Manchester City are now one of the better teams in the country. They are now like second in the league or third in the league if they're behind Leicester, I think maybe. But either way, they have won the league in the last 10 years 4 times. They have won the FA Cup twice, the League Cup 4 times. So they have been really successful this decade, probably the most successful team we've got. But before that decade, they were rubbish. What had happened was they were in the Premier League, then they got relegated to the Championship, then relegated to League One, and eventually they started getting better and better. Now, I went to a Man City game about 3-4 years ago. I took a friend and he just wanted to see some live football and we went to Man City and the Man City fans were chanting at their own fans like, where were you when we were not very good? But let's be honest, they didn't use the words not very good. And so but they were like, where were you? And it was a bit like, you haven't earned, your team have not won the league because of you. Because ultimately, yeah, these fans have been great and loyal, but actually the reason that Man City win the league is that about 12, 13 years ago, they were bought by multi-billionaires who bought the best players and the best managers in. And so what happens was the team started to improve, the players started to improve, the manager was better, and they started to get better. And yes, the fans didn't give up hope in the tough times, but it's not the hope that won the league. It was what they hoped in that won the league. It was the quality of the team, the quality of the players, because you could go to any football club anywhere and you will find fans that hope. You know, like Sunderland, where Annette is from, they hope sometimes, and they are terrible. Like Grimsby, even Grimsby fans at the start of the season would go, what are we hoping for? We hope to get promoted. Well, that hope currently has us sitting in about 20th position out of 24. And so the hope is not enough. It's what we hope in that makes the difference. And so as Christians, it's not about we need to be more hopeful. We need to just try harder to have more hope. Let's think about what is it that is the object of our hope. Dougal was telling us in Life Group the other day, he said it's like walking on a bridge, that the bridge it doesn't hold because you hope it holds. The bridge holds because it's strong enough and it's built to hold. And it's not the hope that gets you over it. The hope might get you onto the bridge. The belief that it'll hold might get you there, but it's the strength of the object itself that carries you. And so it is with Peter as he's talking about Jesus here. He's saying, look, it's not about just being hopeful. It's about what we're hoping in this living hope, this hope that Jesus is different, that Jesus is raised from the dead, and that he will fill us and he will change our lives. And as we hope in him, that is the thing that makes us different. And so the first thing we see is this hope. The second thing that we see, slightly more contentious, is a slightly politically charged word, I think, these days, but he talks about us being foreigners. Oh, that is, things have just fallen off. It's all right. And so he talks about us being foreigners. And so we see that in verse 17, and it says, since you call a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time here as foreigners in this world. And so I inhabit two worlds in my kind of work and personal life. I work at university and I have the youth in this church. And there's a lot of crossover there with being alongside people, encouraging people, trying to teach people. There are people not listening to me. There's a lot of crossover in those two worlds. You know, I teach them on a Friday afternoon. So they are about as happy to see me on Friday at 2 p.m. for 3 hours as the youth are about being in this morning and listening to me. So there's a lot of crossover in those worlds. But the slight thing that is different in those worlds is when I do the young people, they are largely people who speak English as a first language. But when I teach in my class of 300, 350, I have 200 Chinese students. And so that is something I have to consider and think about my language and think about kind of speaking clearly and more slowly. Because Godwin and Sandra were saying the first time they came to church, they remember that I was preaching and I was dressed as a scout. And not my finest moment, my finest hour. So I was dressed as a scout and they understood nothing. And they went home and they went, did you understand that? Oh, no. Did you understand that? Oh, no, nothing. Okay, wonderful. And so I need to bear that in mind when I'm teaching, because there are people who maybe are not necessarily naturally from this place. Now, I did this thing in class called a Kahoot quiz. And so Kahoot quiz is where you get everybody on the phone, you set them 5 questions, they answer the questions, and then you have a leaderboard. And because I teach accounting, I have to bribe people to stay involved. And so I have a prize for the top person of the 300 in the Kahoot. And so the leaderboard comes up at the end. And so I'm saying, right, in third place was some winky emoji. And I was thinking, in second place was a monkey emoji. And I said, I'm really hoping in first place it's an actual name that I'll just say so I can shout out who the winner is. And in first place is... flip. And then all the Chinese students are laughing, like, can I have a go? I am not going to have a go at that because that is risky. And in first place is, I'm hoping one of my Chinese students. Otherwise, somebody has very cleverly played a prank on me there. And so, yeah, thankfully that was a Chinese student that came up and won that. But it was this kind of like, oh boy. And so there is this kind of feeling of like, they feel sometimes that they are in the uni, but they're not really part of it because, you know, there's 200 of them. Everything's in a different language and it's all strange. And sometimes we need to think about that in terms of this world, and we can feel that way. The more that I've become kind of close to God, and when the Holy Spirit has filled me, I have felt a little bit more like I don't belong necessarily anywhere. Like I'll go to work and I'll be like, yeah, I love these people, but I just feel a bit different. Or I'll go to a different place, I'll socialize with some other friends, and I'll be like, yeah, these are my friends and my people, but I feel a little bit different. And the more the Holy Spirit takes over our lives, the more it kind of seems to kind of clash a little bit with the culture and think, man, I stand out a little bit, or I just feel a little bit different. And Pete would have known that. He would have been knowing that his role as kind of one of the kind of Christians that was high up in the church would just say, hey, we are not part of just a normal religious system or the political system. We do not belong. Like, we have a different hope and we have a different set of beliefs. And therefore, we have not got to build this nice, comfortable life here where this is our home, where nothing else, there is nothing else above or beyond the houses that we have, the interactions that we have. You say, no, we set our minds on something different, and that stands us out, and we don't make ourselves as comfortable as we can do. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on about the kind of contrast of going from when I was at this weekend away with the young people, and then literally the same day, we left there on a Sunday, and I went to an accounting conference in London. And sometimes it just feels that we straddle these kind of two very, very different worlds where I'm like, man, there's one point where I feel like this is where I want to be with these young people, just spending time with them, encouraging them. And then I drop myself into this other world where I have to write articles on stuff that I barely understand. And you know what, I feel like that kind of straddle of, it would be easier to just walk away and spend all my time with the young people. But that is not what God is calling us to do in our lives. He does not want us to be removed from this world, but he wants us to know what it is to live as foreigners, to recognize that we are different to the people out there who maybe don't accept there's another kingdom. We are different, but neither are we to run away and just hide in our own little kingdom, that all we know is the people who know God. And it's got to be about that tension where we live in both. And a couple of weeks ago now, about 3-4 weeks ago, maybe longer, we had this tension really kicked in my life, where we had baptisms in the evening, and one of our young people, Eve, was getting baptized, so we really wanted to go there, so we went there and saw that. But I had a meeting in Glasgow the next day, and Lindsay was coming with me to meet one of my colleagues in Glasgow. And so we had the baptism. As soon as the baptism finished, we jumped in the car, we drove to Glasgow. We got to Glasgow late, I don't know, 11, something like that, whatever, 11:30. And so we got there, got to check into the hotel, just exhausted, got in there, gave the name. The guy was like, sorry, can you spell that? Because no one can ever spell my surname. I was like, oh, no, it's E-R. He's like, okay, yeah. No, I've got no reservation. I was like, oh, mate. I was like, okay, well, I've got the email here. And he said, I've got a reservation for next week. And I was like, I was thinking, I've booked the hotel for the wrong week, because that's the kind of guy I am. And then I'll check my calendar. I was like, oh, no, I've booked the hotel for the right week. I've come up a week early. Oh, I am in Glasgow at 11:30. I do not want to be in Glasgow. It's Sunday night. And I just looked. So we're in Glasgow. We have got nowhere to stay. And so, and we were like, I have not got it in the tank to drive back home again. And so I just looked at Lindsay and I was like, I am just sorry. And it was just everything that I was juggling had just got to the point where it's just so much too much that it just felt like I was stood there and I was like, you can't manage anything. You can't cope with this, straddling these worlds. You can't deal with the youth work and being these things. You are just going to make these mistakes. And I stood there and I hated it and I resented everything about the juggling of these two worlds. And in the end, we had a lovely day. We just found somewhere else to stay, and we just had a day in Glasgow, because what else are you going to do? Drive home? And so we had a day. We ate churros and ice cream. It was wonderful. But then I went back to Glasgow the next week, and I was like, right, I'm in Glasgow at my actual meeting, still kind of thinking, right, I have to go back to Glasgow again. I had to get up crazy early, get on a train, go for the meeting, and it was fine. And then in the middle of this meeting, this woman, we were talking about accountancy stuff, dull stuff. And then she said, I was reading this book the other day, and it's about this guy who went through this horrible upbringing. He was in care, and he was passed from place to place. And she said, and he had this social worker, and this social worker was the only person who stuck by him the whole time. She said, and I was reading this book, and I just said, man, it just sounds like Dell and how he loves his young people. And this woman's not a Christian. And I was just like, and I sat in this meeting trying not to cry on her. And I was like, should we do question 3, Alison? And she was like, I just thought, man, I hope that Dell is able to have the impact on young people like that. And I was just like, thank you. And so I was just like in this world where it was like, I was so resentful of merging these two worlds. And it was like God was saying, I want you in both of these worlds. Because what the world does not need is a bunch of Christians who only come alive on a Sunday or on a Friday and will never talk about that in our workplaces tomorrow. Like, we are going to go into our work tomorrow, and the world needs to see the things that we're passionate about. They need to see what we care about, and it needs to come out of us. Not just in a, tomorrow I feel I should talk about Jesus, so how was your weekend? Great, we talked about Jesus. It's a bit intense. It's just a bit intense. It should just come out of the natural love that we have. The reason I talk about the young people all the time, no one's forcing me to, is because they matter to me. And so therefore, I want to talk about them. And so therefore, that's how people get to know about it. And so we should talk about the things that kind of matter, and that kind of maybe feels a bit weird, but that's a thing that the world will see. The third thing that we've got is about perishable things. And so it's a short one. And the thing that another way that we kind of stand out as foreigners is that, the world system revolves around kind of silver and gold, and we get that. So you can see there in Peter, it says, you weren't bought with silver and gold, but with the blood of Christ. And then he goes on and says, again, you weren't born of perishable stuff, but imperishable stuff. And we did not rescue ourselves. We know that. A while ago, me and a bunch of mates, we had to clear out a guy's house for his dad. And so just a bunch of guys from the church, we went down to clear out his house, and it was a mess. I mean, it was a real bad mess. And we are not a practical people. One of the guys was on a bus and we were picking him up, and he just sat there and he missed his stop as we were all sat in the car at his bus stop, and he missed his stop and we were like, is that Phil? He's like, yeah. And then he looked out the window at us and was like, oh man, I've missed my bus. And then for some reason tried to get up through the window and headbutted the window. And so poof, just not, and I was like, oh, Phil is in a bad way. So Phil came off the bus and he was like, yeah, all right, shut up. And we're like, this is a crack team. We chopped through the wire of a strimmer. It was bad. I cannot believe none of us died. And but there was this one bit where there was this microwave of doom. And the house had been empty for I don't know how long. And there was this microwave and it was covered in splatter. And we're like, you open the microwave. No, you open the microwave. I dare you to open the microwave. Well, I dare you. And we're like, okay, let's do it. And so I remember we were all stood and the microwave was about here. And so we were all stood. Somebody got close and I was about this close. And somebody ran over and opened it. And I tell you, the stench that came from that it was like nothing that has ever been created on this earth. And I was like, oh, and I'm like this far away. I'm like, just close it. And we're like, I can't close it. And everyone was like, ah. And it was just like, you couldn't get far enough away. And so what we needed, unsurprisingly, what we did not do was scrub that microwave and clean that microwave. We threw that microwave away. Like, you need a new microwave. And you know what? In here, we did not earn favor with God by just cleaning ourselves up, sorting ourselves out. We just didn't do it. Like the mess that we make of our lives, the mistakes that we make, the sin that we have is too strong for just cleaning it ourselves. It needs something new. Like we were born of something different. And God doesn't completely just say everything you are is garbage, I'm going to get rid of all. He gets rid of all the garbage from us and he makes us new creations. But he doesn't just improve us and he doesn't let us do it ourselves. He makes us new. And we haven't done that ourselves. And in the same way we haven't done it ourselves, if we're talking about being holy, we can't just pursue that ourselves as if that is the goal. I need to make myself as holy as possible. And we talked about this in the group with the young people last week where we did top trumps and we had to create the perfect Christians and we had to give them points and how do we make what things come in and what's important. One of the young people said dress sense was important. I'm not saying who it was. There's no judgment here about whether dress sense is important. And so, but it's not important. And so we were doing this, but you cannot create your own sort of skills. That's not the way. Like we didn't do it. The way we do it is holiness doesn't happen when we pursue holiness. Holiness happens when we pursue the one who is holy. Like when we pursue him, then as a default, we become more like him. And as we become more like him, then we become more holy. Like holiness is not the goal without God. It's not just I need to be better. In life group, we were talking about the fruits of the Spirit recently and, peace, love, joy, gentleness, kindness, self-control, and the ones that I've forgotten. And so, but the point is, you can't just wake up one day and go, I just need more peace. You can probably if you're somebody who doesn't have any peace in your life and you're like a naught, you can probably get up to maybe a 4 or 5 by effort and trying. But that is not the fruit of the Spirit. That is just discipline. But actually, the fruit of the Spirit come from the Spirit. And that comes from a life lived with the Spirit. And we want to pray that we're improving these things, but they come when we're closer to God. And that's the way we do it. So silver and gold buy us stuff in this world. Like, we are in an election time. And obviously, kind of a lot of the things like what we're going to do with the NHS. What do we need? Well, it needs money. Of course it does. It needs money to fix things. And it needs money for transport and all these other things. And that is the way that the world system works. Man City that we talked about before. What improved them? Well, it was the silver and the gold. I teach in business and we look at accounting and we look at why businesses do well and why they fail. And what do we look at? We look at the management of their resources and the skills. So that is how the world works and we get it. But silver and gold do not buy our way into the kingdom of God. They do not buy our way into holiness. But I would also maybe suggest that maybe our just graft and our devotion also don't do it. Like we can't just say to God, well, all right, God, but I have prayed a lot now, so I kind of expect a little bit more now, right? Because I've put more in the bank, so I expect more. In the world, if you pay more for stuff, you expect it to go better. You expect a better quality. But God's not like a vending machine. It's like, right, well, my side of the equation is I've done more, so you should give me more. Well, obviously, great if that happens, but God's not there to be treated like that. We became saved not because of how much we'd done, but because of his goodness and his kindness. And somehow when we become Christians, we think, okay, but I want to just improve. And it's all right to do that. But when we do that with the aim of, and if I improve, God will do more for me, then I think we miss it. What we need is his goodness and his kindness. We came with nothing to offer God, and we kind of still have nothing to offer God other than ourselves. It's through his grace and his goodness that actually we become more like him and more holy. Not because he thinks, well, you've done well now, I'm going to give you more because you are good. Yes, that probably is an overflow, but not an equation like I want to put more in so that, God, you will give me more out. He is not a vending machine. He is not a genie. He is not somebody to kind of treat like that. And the final thing that we've got is about love. And, you can't kind of get away from it. It's in there. And so Peter says, now that you've purified yourselves so by obeying the truth, you have love for each other. Love deeply from the heart. And again he says, because you've not been born from yourself, you are different. And love makes us do weird things. Like Charlie, who's not here, who has now a baby, and she's married to the wonderful Lewis. But you know what? Charlie dated a guy when she was young who had a lobster, and she said, well, I love you so much. When you're away, I will look after your lobster for you. The lobster obviously was called Pinchy. Why would you not name a lobster Pinchy, of course? So she was scared of the lobster. She put the lobster in her home. She's like, well, what if Pinchy comes out in the night and attacks me? And so she thought, what I need to do is I'm just going to put some Bibles on the top of his thing so that he can't get out. So he's way down and he can't get out. He can't lift it up, and it's fine. Obviously, she blocked the air, so all she's done is she just kills a lobster. And so she's like, here's Pinchy. He's massively dead. And so that relationship didn't work. But she don't have a lobster in the first place. Love makes you look after lobsters. Like, what is that? Like, love makes you do kind of crazy stuff. And we all know that we need love. We recognize the value of love. And we want to be people who kind of resonate love so that when people see us, they go, man, they love differently. But just as holiness isn't like a goal, like I just need to be more holy, if we just say I just need to love more, we kind of miss the point again. We just say, right, my aim is to be more loving. Like, that's not the way it is. It's a good thing to want to be able to love people more and to be challenged on it, but the method is not discipline. I don't wake up and go, I need to be more loving towards Lindsay. Oh, but it's an effort and I have to try. That would be a weird way of doing it, right? Like, love should come from a desire in the heart and an overflow, rather than, I want Lindsay to know that I follow Jesus, and the way that she's going to know it is if I love her, so I should try and love her better. That's just a weird way of approaching life, right? Like, it's just a weird thing to do, and yet I know I want to love the young people in a way that they can't deny that God loves them, because they look at us and go, man, if these people love us, then God loves us. But if I try and do it myself, I am too weak, I am too selfish, I am too sinful, I am too stubborn, I'm too proud. I will not get there. Like, if I try and say, I just want to do all I can to work hard at loving these people, it will not work. It will only work when I go, God, man, will you teach me to love? Will you help me? Will you come alongside me? And Dougal said in our life group a couple of weeks ago, he said, like, if you ask God to teach you how to love, it will ruin you in the best of ways. It will, and it will ruin us, and it will be challenging, and it will ruin us in the best of ways. And then he said, quite cruelly towards some of you, he said, and you never know, that might mean that you end up in Warrington. And I was like, well, that's a dig, isn't it? That's a dig. I'm not from Warrington, so I didn't take it personally. Dennis, who's in the group, said, but I was from Warrington, so maybe God would mean I have to live in Grimsby. I was like, that's a dig. That is a dig. Get out. And so it's about saying, God, will you transform us? And we can only do it closer to him, because Peter knows what it is to be hopeful. He knows what it is to be a foreigner, and he knows what it is to be forgiven and not to be just earning his own way. And he talks about love here because he knows what it is to feel love. In John 21, Peter has denied Jesus, so Jesus has gone to the cross, and the girl says to Peter, aren't you one of his mates? And Peter's like, no, I don't know him. I just don't know him. Leave me alone. Don't know him. And so he must have been so ashamed and so embarrassed. And when Peter comes up and speaks to him afterwards, he doesn't say like, right, Peter, are you going to follow me again? You're going to be stronger this time? You're going to be braver? Do you regret it? Are you sorry? He doesn't do all of that. He says, Peter, do you love me? Well, there's no big challenge. There's no big like, well, what does it mean to love me? Just, do you love me? And Peter goes, well, of course I do. And then he says again, do you love me? Well, yeah, do you love me? And that's the question. It's not just a thing that we go, right, I want to be better at this. It's, do we love him? Because actually, if we're going to be holy, if we're going to be different in this world, we need to be people who know what it is to love God first of all. And if that is our heart, then actually things come and things flow. from there. And I'm going to just tell you some stuff that I wrote on that day when I went from being with the young people to the accounting conference, this kind of weird thing. This will make sense in a second, don't worry. And so I went from the two weirdest worlds. And as I got there, I just felt just like that my heart was just kind of bouncing with love. Like I just felt like I had this wonderful time, and I loved the opportunity to spend time with these guys, and how exciting it was, and how great it was that God had helped us to kind of do all that we'd done. And so I wrote this, and I have a history of not being able to read things that I've written, so it goes, eh? And so I sit in London, straddling the two ridiculous worlds that I live in. Last night, my heart was filled as incredible young people preached, led worship, prayed together, cried together. I chatted round the fire with some of the people who mean the most to me in this world. This morning, I woke up and yelled at 50 young people to wake up, and boy, did we yell. I then cleaned the toilet with Jacob Clark. Isn't that right, Jacob? Yeah, I cleaned the toilet with Jacob Clark, and why did I do that? Because I said the last person up has to get and clean the toilet. I did not realize my wife had still not got up, and she stung me there. She was the last person in the room, and the young people enjoyed that greatly. And so they were like, "Where's Lindsay, Del? She's not up yet, is she? You said last person up, everyone in their room has to clean the toilets." I did say that. I had not thought this through. And so, and Jacob Clark had to just clean toilets for me as punishment, didn't you, Jacob? And so, yeah, that was the deal, unlucky. So then now I sit in a top-end hotel before an international financial reporting conference. Often I feel I'm faking it and hanging on in this world. So many of these people will spend their entire work on this stuff, and they know so much about it. I'm going to sit in a corner, typing away, doing my best as the least qualified person in the room. I sit here wishing I had 2 more days with the young people rather than 2 days at a conference. I know which world I feel most comfortable in. Yet I know somehow God is teaching me something. I know that he calls me to straddle these two worlds, that there's a gloriously uneasy tension about working as hard as you can in one world, but also not living for it. And as I think about that, I think about my granddad, and this is my granddad. You can see where I get the hairline from. And so, yeah, he's got more hair than me. Some of you will have noted that, shut up. And so, as I kind of think about it, I think about my granddad. I think about a guy who was possibly the most devoted man to Christ that I'd ever met. He oozed the love of God to people. He was wise, he was kind, and his life counted. And he had a deep, intimate relationship with God. He longed to know him more, to learn more, and to help others on that journey. It was only on his funeral that I discovered he went to Bible college for a year, but it didn't work out. Nobody ever said why, but it would make sense that he would go. I don't know why he didn't go on and qualify and become a full-time Christian, but I'm really glad that he didn't. I know he went back to work, and he worked hard with all the integrity in the world. And he was probably the most selfless man I know, always doing things for others, going out of his way. His time and his money were not his own, but they belonged to God. It was like he'd made a deal that God could have all of him, and he kept that deal every day. He may have never been paid by a church, and he did some weird job managing a pea harvest, but he was a full-time Christian in every sense of the word. He gave his absolute best to one world, but knowing that his heart belonged to another. And after he died, I took every book he had on Bible study, and it was only as I got older that I was able to see the legacy he had on my life. I want his books and his study and his investment to help others. I want to build on what he did. I want to pass it on. And without ever knowing it, I want to be more like my granddad than I'd known. And I wish Lindsay could have met my granddad. The good news is we're near the end, so you don't need to bail me out yet, Lindsay. You may need to. I wish the young people could have met him. I mean, they all keep bothering me about taking him to Grimsby, which is fair enough, because it's a wonderful place. And so, knowing what I know now, I would drive some of the young people to meet him so they could see a true great example of a life following Christ. When I hit 21 and started work, I used to think maybe one day I would leave my job and just work full-time for a church. I used to assume that I would quit it all and then devote all my time to it. And maybe that will happen, but the more I sit in this ordinary world, I realize that right now, my calling is to work in this bizarre world and yet have my heart come alive for something else. I think that God is teaching me what it means to have all my time devoted to him, whether I work for a church or not. And at his funeral, people told stories of my granddad and reflected on him. And the one constant we knew is that he had lived a great story. His name won't be on any big records. He won't show up on Google. Yet his story was that his heart belonged to Jesus and that he trusted him with everything. And it's a story that trickled into the life of many. And so, yeah, I want to live a spectacular story. Like, who doesn't? Yeah, I know that when it comes down to it, I want it to be a story that my heart belongs to Jesus and not this world. And, you know, I don't know really what holiness kind of means and how we get there. But I don't know. I think if we get to that point where we say, do you know what? My heart belongs to Jesus and not this world. I think the more we're in that place, maybe the more that we'll become like him, and maybe then we'll be this kind of different people in this world, and we'll be able to show them something that they just can't see anywhere else. And so, yeah, God, I just thank you that it is you that makes the difference, that it's not our own graft, it's not our own effort, but as we draw near to you, you bring us stuff that we just can't create. You bring us yourself and your presence. And I thank you that one day we will see you face to face and we will know how great you are. And God, I just pray that you would just help all of us to know that more and more now, that we would not wait for that day, but we would just know what it is to walk with you, to sit with you, and to embrace all of your goodness all the days of our life. Help us with that, Lord. Amen.
All right. Thank you, Del. All right. That is it for Sunday. Thank you so much for coming. Be encouraged. I just wanted to say a challenge this week. In moments where we feel like we don't measure up, or we've got so much more to go, or we've got so much more to learn about how to live for Christ and how to be a Christian, whatever that means. Let's put down things of obligation, and let's do this, and let's do that, and let's do that, a checklist. Just go to God. Just spend time with him. And the more, like Del said, the more that we spend time with him, the more our lives reflect who he is. So stick around. There's coffee in the gym hall. Have conversations with people, and we'll see you next week.